Hi, everyone. Welcome to Galit Speaks, and I am here with a very special guest today. Her name is Jennifer Sherwood, and we have some amazing topics on deck. But Jen, I'll tell you a little bit about Jen. She helps women go beyond what seems possible right now and design a life that they love so they can quit trying so hard, stop feeling like every day requires a nap or a bottle of wine, and have a life that they no longer just tolerate, that they actually enjoy. So welcome, Jennifer. I'm super excited to have you.
Thanks. I'm super excited to be here. I had to giggle at that because I mean, that is a true story that I work with women who feel like every day, like, God, if I could just get a rest, if I could just get some rest. Or they may find themselves, like they didn't mean to finish that bottle of wine last night, but that's where they're at.
Yeah, I definitely can can feel that. I definitely can feel some. I don't know, so not so much for me about the bottle of wine because I don't really drink that much, but definitely take a nap.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that gets me because I wake up early and then some days it's just go, go, go,
Yeah.
go. And you just like, so what do you do for people that feel like that?
Well, I think it's really important, first of all, to figure out where's that coming from. And in a culture like ours, women are subtly and not so subtly um, conditioned, I guess is the word we could use over the years, that our value really comes from how we look. I mean, that's why the diet industry is I think I looked at the stats recently. It was like a $75 billion industry. Frankly, it is the only industry that you could go into, try, not be successful, and keep trying again, right? So, one of the ways that we are taught that we're valuable is how we look. And one of the other big ways is what we can do for other people. And so, if you really believe that your value is based on what you look like and what you can do for other people, it really sets you up to be someone who says yes all the time, right? It's really important to make other people happy. So, you're a people pleaser. And then just going out of your way to do for others doesn't give you the space to have time in your own life. It doesn't really give you the space or the comfort level to speak up. So a lot of times this exhaustion is because they don't have boundaries. They don't know how to say no. And if they do say no, it comes with this massive amount of guilt because if your value comes from doing for others, when you say no, what does that mean about you? There's massive fear of judgment. So this was a very long-winded answer to your question, but I think the first place to start is to really help women recognize what is driving the behavior and do you like the driver?
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things that I started doing um, was just super simple. It was, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And
Yes.
just being like, I'm holding to that.
Yeah.
Like, no, it doesn't feel good. I am just not going to do this. Obviously, there are some pieces of my life where I can't necessarily do that, right? But I do it with definitely things where I feel like a boundary needs to be drawn. I'm just like, is this a hell yes? No. So we're gonna say no,
Yeah.
and we're just gonna push forward.
Were you
But
ever a person who was saying yes when you didn't want to?
all the time, all the time, I was exactly that person.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
person that literally would run myself down to help other people and not have anything left in the tank for myself.
Yeah.
I at one point, when I first started my business, so I've been in business, I'm in business 7 years now. When I first started it, I own a virtual CFO company and then I do financial wellness coaching. It started as bookkeeping, and I was saying yes to so much that I actually was working until like 10 p.m. every single night.
Yeah.
I gained, I was like almost 86 pounds heavier.
Wow.
I was just at a point where I was just like so overwhelmed and so stressed. And there was so many things. Like I said yes to the wrong person. I was with somebody that I didn't want to be with.
Yeah.
and I was unhappy with, and I was engaged to them, and like I was like living this life that was completely just exhausting all the time and frustrating. And it got to a point where there was like two catalysts for me. One was my doctor was like, "You're healthy now, but if you keep going on like this, you're not going to be, and you are going to die young. You need to do something." And
That's
when he said that, I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. This is fucking serious
yeah,
now."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, "No, no, no, that's not happening." And I immediately like put steps in place. Like I was like, "I'm leaving work at 7:30. That was my cutoff. Every night I'm leaving work at 7:30, no later than that. I'm working out twice, 3 times a week. I'm starting on, a healthy diet and getting my and then eventually and then also the second catalyst was me going through this, and I there was a woman that owned a business near mine, and I went in and it was a restaurant, and she saw my engagement ring, and she was like, "Oh, you're engaged? When are you getting married?" And I was like, "I don't have a date yet." She's like, "How long have you been engaged?" It's
Oh.
like 2 years. She's like, "He's not the one." And she said it just like that. And I was
Wow.
like, "Oh, what do you mean?" "No, no, no. I just haven't had time." She's like, "No, no, no. He's not the one. If he was, you would have made time." And I was
Wow.
like, "Oh, this is like another just moment." And
Wow.
and then I was just after that, it took me like less than 6 months to like I had him move out. I changed my whole life around.
What a gift.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking that your doctor delivering that message to you at a place where you were still healthy and you still could do something about it. Well, one, you listened, but what a gift to hear that. And when you were saying in that part of the conversation that you were engaged, my mind immediately went to, oh my gosh, the expectations around you at that point. You're already engaged. How do you gracefully back out of that? Is what I would think most people are thinking. Like, it's too late. I'm already here, which we all know is
Yeah.
BS. But I can imagine that those thoughts went through your head. But then this total stranger just reads you right there. And good for her for being so upfront and just saying to you, look, this is not the person for you. If it was, you wouldn't be in this sort of it's not wishy-washy, that's not the word I want, but this undecided place 2 years later. And again, for you to listen. How amazing to have these events happen in your life and for you to listen to them. Because a lot of times we get messages and we don't listen. And then it's 10 years down the road when you're either still engaged or you're in a marriage that is unhappy or whatever that life circumstance is. And then you're thinking, oh yeah, remember back when I thought about this and then I didn't do it? I am so happy for you. Not that you were in a place that wasn't good, but that you listened and that you took the initiative to make a change. And your life is so different now. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's totally different. Like I am embodying what I want and who I am. I looked completely different, right? Like I was very overweight, long hair, always hiding,
Yeah.
normal looking hair, not not blue. The only thing that we spoke a little bit before we came on air about me being a scuba diver,
Yes.
and that was like the only thing that I did for myself. Still, like went on these like scuba vacations, and it's crazy because most of my life I've been super in tune to like doing what I feel I want to do and making sure that I can do it. Like when I was 19, I took a hiatus from college for a year and a half and went traveling through South America for 6 months by myself. Like I have always been that person that just like I see something, I want something, I do it. Even when I started my business, it was like I stayed in my W-2 job just until I got a mortgage on my condo, and then I quit the day after my mortgage was recorded.
I love it.
Like, and I'm just like, I'm that person who's just like, all right, I feel something, I know I need to do it. I'm gonna just dive head first. And for some reason, like during that period of time in my life, I was just, I guess, so locked up and beaten down and just saying yes to the wrong things and just not understanding, how I got to where I got.
Yeah.
And I needed that, like, someone to be brutally honest and just be like, hey, this is not you. You need to like snap in again.
Yes. No, I really understand that. For me, the way that I was a yes person. I did not have that spiritual, not that spirit of adventure. That's what I'm trying to say that you have. When I was younger, I was definitely a people pleaser. And that's part of growing up. For me, there was safety in that. If I could, or so I thought, if I could make everybody else around me happy, that was a level of safety and comfort for me. And so to say no rocked that boat, as so to speak. And when I had kids, so I have two kids, and when they were born, when I look back on it now, I had everything I wanted. And I couldn't see it because for me, I I mean, it never really goes away, this really brutal inner critic. And as my kids were little, I'm sure it was there before, but it just became so loud when my kids were born about how I should show up and what I should look like as a mom and how I should be interacting with them. And the truth was, nothing I ever did was good enough. And the funny thing is, when you look back, I mean, nothing was ever good enough, but I was the one setting those goals, right? Or those unrealistic expectations based a lot on what I had been conditioned to believe motherhood should look like. And there was this seminal moment kind of like that for me, but it was my husband. And he didn't say to me, you're making yourself crazy. That's not what happened at all. But we met a woman, kind of random restaurant thing. And she was going to graduate school. She had just found out that she got into grad school. And she was like oozing passion and excitement and joy all over us as she was telling. And it was fun, right, to be in that energy. So she takes our order and she kind of, I'm not even joking, she kind of like skips away from the table because she's so happy. And I look at him and I said, oh my God, could you imagine being like that? Could you imagine feeling like that? And he said, that was you in grad school. And I am telling you, Galit, it was like this cold splash of water. Like, where is that woman? Where did she go? And I'd love to say that, the next day I changed everything. It was a little more of a slow process, but that really was a turning point for me to start thinking about, like, well, where did that person go? And what did happen to me? And frankly, I think what happened to me was I just let all these ideas of what I thought life was supposed to look like beat the crap out of me to the point where it kind of just sucked all the joy out. And so I'm really glad when I think about who I was when I was doing my graduate studies, I was really passionate and fired up. And that's how I feel now again about the work that I do. And it's because I went on a path and I went on a journey and I started doing this work on myself. And once I could see how much of my own beliefs were getting in my way, I just thought, I don't want other women to suffer the way that I've been suffering. So I quit a 20-year career in medical. I was a pediatric audiologist in the medical field for over 20 years. And I was done. I was burnt. I was finished. This is what I wanted to do because I never want another woman to just be buried under this BS, basically. I want other women to see they're not stuck, that they have choices and have the life they love. That's why I do this. And so I'm really happy to say, kind of like you, I found my way back to me and who I am.
Yeah. So what was the first step that you took to get back to you?
So the first step I took was therapy. I went in and I learned a lot about myself. And then as I was moving through that process, I was simultaneously pretty burnt out in my career. And at the time, so audiology is hearing science, and I had worked clinically for a long time. But when this was happening, I was actually a consultant for the Department of Health here in California. And so I was thinking, like, okay, I have a pretty narrow field. My degree is pretty narrow. What else do I want to do? And so then I really started thinking about, what do I love in my work? And what I loved about my work was writing, teaching, and speaking. I used to go across the country and present on the program for our state. And as I was thinking about what I loved, because that's what I wanted to do, I just wanted, if I was going to work, I wanted it to be doing what I love to do. I don't know where the idea of life coaching came in. I honestly don't know how it came into my awareness, but it just kept coming up. And I thought, writing, teaching, speaking, that could all fit really neatly under the umbrella of coaching. So I hired a coach because I thought, well, I want to see what this is all about. And she rocked my world. It was really the first time working with her that I could see that I have beliefs that might not be true. And I'm operating from
Yeah.
this belief system, and then really kind of learning how that impacts me in my body and getting in tune with my body. And then that was it. It was coaching for me. Therapy was necessary. I'm a huge proponent of it. But
Yeah.
once I got into coaching, it felt like, okay, I have a tool to manage this. I have a tool to deal with that. And I've just been off to the races ever since.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm all for therapy. So you were talking about your childhood and that it had put, you were a people pleaser in childhood because it felt safer.
Yeah.
And I identify with that so strongly. I grew up in a house of domestic violence where to be a people pleaser was literally how you survived,
Literally. Yeah.
right? So
Yes.
yeah, so and my personality is such that I am not good with authority. Like I am very, so it was so hard for me and I had to really go against my own personality and my own characteristics in order to survive.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where this struggle goes on within me of like I'll go into these periods where I'm people pleasing and then be like, oh, no, this is not me. This doesn't feel like me. And then I fight back against it
Yeah.
incredibly hard. But yeah, so I identify with that super strongly. And growing up, also, my father, who was my abuser, was also an Orthodox rabbi. I'm Jewish.
Wow.
So and I was in super Orthodox religious schools, like all girls school, where I this was crazy. I went to public school for in elementary, and then I got to middle school, and I was put into this like super religious all girls school, and the level of teaching was so poor in
Yeah.
that school that I was in a math class 4 grades above mine because like I was just like, why are you guys still learning like subtraction and addition? Like this was baby stuff. And so it was this environment where like they taught us how to sew and how to do this and like all of the things that they taught us basically how to be a mother and a housewife.
Yep.
And that was my societal expectation, right? Like I was not expected to have a career. I was not expected to do anything for myself. It was always like, oh no, you just marry someone and
Oh,
then
yeah.
you raise babies
Yeah.
and that's all you're good for.
That's all those are literally, sorry to interrupt you. Those are literally the words that were in my head. That's all you're good for. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're just a baby maker. So that was also when I saw the topics that you speak on, I was like, I want to talk about like what society expects of women
yeah.
and why we are so hard on ourselves.
It is interesting. Well, I do think we are hard on ourselves because of those expectations, obviously, because of the expectations. But if we're busy beating ourselves up, we don't have the outward focus to go do what we're capable of doing. So, all of these things that are put upon us, I really think it's I don't want to say, I don't want to say that there's a boardroom where people are like, okay, and now let's make women feel like this. Maybe someday there was, but I think it's just so ingrained in us now. But all the crap that we're busy worrying about, women being competition, how does our ass look in our yoga pants? All that kind of BS. really keeps us from doing meaningful work and from taking care of ourselves. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're just burning ourselves out, we're completely limiting our capacity for growth and change. And so there is somewhere in there that was by design. Maybe, I don't know, somebody who understands sociology better than I could speak to that. But I think that is the outcome of it, is that we're so focused on things that don't serve us, it keeps us from coming together. If one of the things that drives me nuts in our culture is that we view other women as competition. That has been ingrained in us, right? I just literally, the Real Housewives, I hope I don't get sued for this on, we're broadcasting here, but like that kind of attitude, it serves no one. If we women could come together, we would rule the freaking world. I mean, we are so powerful when we support one another. And so as you're asking that, I realize I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I do think it makes us focus on things that are not moving us forward. And we have work to do in this world, like powerful work, not crossing crap off of our to-do list. We have powerful work to do in this world. And as long as we allow ourselves to be worried about what people are going to think and afraid to speak up, and I'm guilty of this. I want to be really clear that I think no matter how much work I do on myself, those old voices will still be there, right? My inner critic will still pop up and still have questions. But these days, I spot it more quickly and I don't give in to it the way I used to. My inner critic, by the way, her name is Muffy. She has a really tight bun and she wears sweater sets and pearls. And so when Muffy gets her panties in a bunch, I see her more quickly. And I'm like, yeah, okay. All right, Muffy, I got it. I got it. But I do think it's really getting in our way of doing what we're here to do. I don't even remember your question. Did I answer it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was just about societal expectations. Yeah, there were so many things in what you just said. I have to touch on the competition thing.
Oh, please. Yes.
That women are, we are really taught that there is, I remember this from when I worked in the bank. I worked in a bank. I worked at Morgan Stanley, and I had my boss was a woman, and the boss above her was a woman. And my only mentor at the company was someone not affiliated with my department at all. I actually went to like a women's group within Morgan Stanley, and I ended up befriending this woman. And she helped me through, because there was literally, they would not promote me and they would not put me into a different thing, because there was this idea that there's only room for so many women at the table. Mm-hmm. And if you are in here, then I can't be here.
Yes.
And it was horrific. And I had to leave. And I actually met with my mentor several times after I left. And she's like, don't you feel much better now that you're on your own and you've left that? Like, don't you feel like you can accomplish things? Like, she's like, never be in competition with other women. There's no competition. There is a million seats at the table. We can all sit up here. And instead work in the other direction, uplift other women.
Yes, there's so much power in that. And, it's at that level. And I think we really need, the education needs to happen across the spectrum of ages. So you've got those women who were out professionally and they're thinking there's only so many seats at the table. It needs to happen there. And then think about the elementary school playground where we've got the mean girls and the queen bees, and that is where all this competition stuff starts and frankly gets solidified, because I run women's groups and it is, well, I'm not surprised anymore, to be honest, but initially it was really surprising to me for when I would bring women together, how some people had a really hard time letting their guard down in a group because they were so sure that someone there was going to use information against them, or they had to kind of watch their back. And, it's really, really ingrained in us from such an early age. And that's what I rally against. I think you and I were talking about that. I really want to make a difference here. And so that's partly why I very intentionally, I run a monthly membership program, and I call that group, when I talk about it, I call it the safest, warmest corner of the internet, because I have the most incredible women in that group, and they are all about like, I almost feel like every time we get in there, like it's one big giant hug around the Zoom space, you know, and they're
Amazing.
just amazing, and they're so in there to support one another. And then I run women's retreats, and that feeling is in the room from the get-go because I'm very intentional about setting confidentiality agreements and boundaries, and like just giving women that first experience of being in a space where you can trust other women is huge. Because when you get that impression as a young girl, I'm going to guess you know this experience. I was bullied in the third grade. It makes a huge imprint on you about what it means to trust other women. And it is so time for us as grown-ups to recognize that and stop, and then teach our girls, our nieces, our daughters, our whatever, the same thing. Because that's the only way, coming together, that's the only way we're going to do what we want to do.
And I love that you took it as far as having contracts in place
Oh, yeah.
that make people feel safe.
Yeah.
Because when you sign a confidentiality agreement, when you sign, an NDA, when you sign something like that, you're like, oh, okay, this is legit. I can talk now.
Let me be clear. I don't actually have them sign anything. It's all verbal agreement, but still the same thing. We're all,
Yes.
if I do a retreat, we do a pre-retreat call where everybody agrees to confidentiality before we even walk in the door, because I'm very serious about that. I mean, I think a verbal contract is pretty darn binding, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is if you're going to go talk about somebody outside, then somebody else could go talk about somebody outside. So I think that's really what holds us together, is we start off with this container of trust, and it just grows from there.
I love that.
Thank you.
And I'm a big proponent of having these types of groups. One of the things, so I recently, about a year and a half ago, I moved to Arizona, and I'm living in Arizona now. But when I was in New York, I was part of a nonprofit, and I'm still actually on the board of that nonprofit, called Ladies of Business Rockaway Beach. And it was started as like a support group for female business owners, where it didn't have to be about business. It didn't have to be about networking. That happened, but it was really about coming and having people to talk to, and having people to support you and bounce ideas off of, and stuff like that. And so we still meet so we've always met every month, the first Monday of the month. And now it's just on Zoom because, COVID happened and it went to Zoom. We're getting back a little bit to in-person meetings. I'm actually going to New York tonight. My flight is, but we're going to be having like a party and a meeting. And I'm so excited to see all of those women, because they were such a big part of me getting back to myself. And it was because I had like this strong support system of other women. And you touched on this in your topics of like the power of female connection. Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge proponent of it, because yes, you can be friends with everyone and you can have support from all different groups and all different things, but there's something to be said about just almost like a coven of women just all rooting for each other. There's something so powerful about that. And, we don't get enough opportunities to have that in daily life.
No, I 100% agree. And I wish I knew the stats off the top of my head, but there were studies that were done looking at health and longevity in women with good, solid female friendships versus those who felt more isolated. And they were saying that female friendships were like as impactful as on health as smoking is. It's no joke when we say we need each other. And I just was reading an article on post-pandemic stress, and they were talking about how social connection is a hallmark to mental well-being. And this is what we're talking about. So you put those two factors together, and it's not just nice to have girlfriends, it's imperative. We live longer, we have better relationships, we have better health. I mean, it's absolutely imperative. You just reminded me, I love that group is where this started for me, but you reminded me of something you were talking about earlier. And so if I could back up for a second.
Yeah.
When you were talking about scuba diving and how you would go away once in a while and do that, it made me think of, women who can't say no and who aren't really owning their time and time for themselves. It's interesting. I don't know if this comes up for you in conversations, but it definitely comes up for my clients. I need a nap kind of attitude. But if I could just take a vacation. But we go on vacation and a lot, depending on who you go with, it may be a lot of like rushing family around and doing what other people want to do. And so you come home and you're more tired than when you went on vacation. And I was thinking about that in terms of having connections with friends to make time to do things on the regular. So it's not just a scuba trip once in a while and thinking that that's going to make up for working until 10 o'clock at night. That was the connection I was making when you were saying it. You can't just work till 10 o'clock every single night and then go on a scuba trip once a year. It just doesn't work that way. And so if we're making time for ourselves with or without friendships involved, like just time for ourselves. And our our culture is really anti-lazy. I read somewhere that's the one thing that people don't want to be viewed as more than anything else in the world is lazy. So if I can't tell you how many times I've had clients say to me, gosh, I wasn't feeling that well this weekend, and I was kind of glad because then I could watch Netflix all afternoon and not feel guilty. Because they're worried if they sit on the couch on a Sunday afternoon and watch Netflix or read a book or whatever, somebody's going to think they're lazy. This happens, to be clear, even if they live alone, because there's just this old programming. So I kind of got off the female connection topic for a second here, but that same thing, making time for ourselves, making time for these really important female connections, all of that. This is all what happens when we learn to value ourselves, value our time, and just, saying no and putting the line in the sand of, I need this time. It's vital to my health and well-being.
Yeah. And that's like the biggest point, right? It is absolutely vital to health and well-being. And I think that's the point that people gloss over so often. They're like, oh yeah, it's nice to have friends. It's nice to have connections. No, you absolutely need this time. You need to take the time. You need to take the days where you're just sitting around and doing nothing, because you need to recharge. You are not an unlimited battery.
Right.
You need to recharge. You need to sleep. You need to rest. You need to make sure that you're healthy and that you're not running yourself ragged. And like for women especially, because we are always told, and we know this growing up, that if we're in, any situation, we have to do twice as much as the men to get half the recognition, you know? So we are constantly in this like, prove ourselves.
Yep.
And when you're in that cycle, there is no time to recharge, because the second you think, the second you step down, you're like, oh, somebody else is going to take over and I'm going to be, I'm not going to be relevant anymore.
Yeah. And I'm going to be exhausted at the end of it. I think the other piece too about actually taking the time is, if you're going to take time to rest, if your brain is on a spin cycle about what you should be doing, you might as well just get up and do whatever it says you should be doing, because you're not resting and you're not recharging. I think that's a really key point. And then, I got to say, the term self-care has been thrown around in a way that feels very superficial these days. I actually what we're talking about is self-care, but I don't even like to use that term anymore, because I'm not talking about going and getting a pedicure. Listen, I've got nothing against a pedicure. Go get it if you enjoy it. But most people go get a pedicure and they're scrolling Instagram, and there's nothing that's recharging your psyche, your brain, it's not really filling your cup if you're not doing something that's calming. Like if you're just feeding your brain with the scroll, it's not really recharging. If you're going and you're sitting next to a girlfriend and you're open and you're talking, that could be a very different story. But I just wanted to kind of define a little bit this sort of superficial, oh, just go take a bubble bath. Oh, just, but we're not talking about that. We're actually talking about really replenishing yourself.
Yeah. So do you have a term that you like better?
I haven't come up with one yet, unfortunately. I mean, there's some self-love involved in that, but I don't think women who are on this track are really going to resonate with take some time for self-love. There might be a little pushback on that, but it is. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. And if you come up with something, please tell me.
Yeah, because I do love that. Maybe I love one of my favorite words is intentional. So maybe like intentional self-care.
Ooh, that's so
So
funny. I have
it's
to
like,
tell you, there's a post-it right above my computer that says intentional. That's my word for the year. So I love that you just said that.
yeah,
Intentional self-care. Maybe that's it. Yeah.
yeah, because that's really what it is. It's like having the intent to really recharge and care for yourself and give yourself the time and the space that you need in order to heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a lot of trauma that comes up with it.
Yes. And also, can we just for a quick second talk about so we're really advocating here for female connections. One thing I want to caution about is what is that expression? Nothing brings two women together like the mutual dislike of a third. I think there's some expression about that.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about. Getting together and gossiping about someone or something, that is not a way to build yourself up, and it does not make you feel good. It doesn't really fill anything. And so I want to just encourage women who are listening to us to think about what those connections look like. We're talking about putting the guard down, having real connection. This is not a bitch fest. This isn't a go complain about your husband. I mean, we need the space with our friends to talk about what's real in life, but I want to put that out there just as kind of something to think about. Going and sitting and complaining and gossiping, that's not going to fill your cup.
Yeah. But, some of the things that I have done, which have felt like it was filling my cup, were, going with a group of women and having like a full moon ceremony where you have like a fire pit.
Yeah.
And you write down either something that usually it's something that you're getting rid of, something that you don't want in your life, something that you're holding on to, like a limiting belief, and you throw it into the fire. And that really feels like intentional self-care in that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe there's women who aren't quite at that. They don't know where to go find a moon ceremony right now, because I love what you're talking about. But maybe just show up places and have the intention not to talk about other people.
Yeah.
Maybe it starts as simple as that. And then surrounding yourself with other women who want that kind of a thing. I don't have women in my life anymore that I have to watch my back with. Does that make sense? And when I hear my clients talking about things at work or people they're connected to where they're concerned about things like that, getting very intentional in moving away from those situations as much as possible in the work environment, but definitely at home. If you're surrounded by people that you really don't feel you can trust, that's something to question. And so starting to surround yourself with people who would go to a moon ceremony, right? Who would get in there and that's what a thing like that is about, is like getting really real. So trying to find and cultivate intentionally your social groups is a really important thing. Who you surround yourself with. You're a reflection. What's that expression of the 5 people you spend the most time with? Well, think about that. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with, and what do you want that to look like? Something to consider.
Yeah, and I love that you said just get together with the intention of not talking about anyone else.
Yeah, just start
right
there.
and see what else comes up. Because when we're talking about other people, we are not real with ourselves.
Right.
So anything that's really going life and we're just glossing over because we are talking about other people, we're gossiping.
Yeah.
And you don't ever have to get real.
Yes. Yeah. It allows you to keep your armor up and just, I will say, in my 20s, total gossiper, full disclosure here. And then there was something around my 30s where I thought, that's not how I want to be anymore. And so there was a period of adjustment for me, for sure. Like, okay, well, what am I going to talk about? And so I promise you, it will get easier. And there's plenty in the world to talk about that doesn't involve trashing somebody else. And you just feel better if we want to build ourselves up, if we want to feel better about ourselves, which most people are on the quest to do. I mean, we don't get there by climbing on the backs of other women.
Yes, I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Just that sentence alone, if anyone is watching and you want to just take that one piece of this conversation, that'll be enough, you know?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, how do people get in touch with you? What are the different programs that you run? Tell me a little bit about them.
Oh, okay. I love, and not that I haven't loved everything we're talking about, but let's talk about this. This is so exciting for me. I do one-on-one coaching, and that's very focused, tailored specifically to whatever is going on in the woman's life. I don't have a one-size-fits-all program. I really meet my clients where they are. What is she looking for, even if she doesn't know? And then we're going to work on it. We work on getting unstuck, figuring out what's driving what's going on. That's a lot of the focus in one-on-one coaching. And then I run a program called the GC. This is my group, and it's a monthly membership. I really wanted something that felt easy for women. So there's no long-term commitment. You can come in anytime, leave anytime. This is my safest, warmest corner on the internet. And all of my one-on-one clients get membership in the GC as a bonus. So I've got those two things going on at the same time. I have a retreat coming up in Carmel, and I'm putting Carmel, California, beautiful, coastal, super charming little town, first weekend in November. There's information coming out on that. And the way you can find me, my website, super easy, jennifersherwood.com. And then on all the socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, I'm Jennifer Sherwood Coaching. And I would love to have you come and connect with me, DM me, tell me what you thought about it. Tell me, if you thought we were way off base or right on track, whatever. I'd love to interact with you. And if anybody is feeling overwhelmed right now and stressed out, if you go to my website, you can sign up for 3 steps to go from overwhelm to ease. And they're super simple steps. And I drop them one at a time. So you're not bombarded with stuff, just really easy steps that you can implement right now to start bringing down the level of overwhelm in your life. I am all about trying to bring in more ease for me, for my clients, for women who are just, sort of adjacent in my world. Please go check it out and let me know what you think of it.
Yeah, I'm super into all of it. I actually have a question on your retreat.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you do on retreat, and what do people get out of it?
My retreats are they're pretty immersive experiences. And what I mean by this is what I'm talking about. Like from the get-go, we really get into being together, and my spaces open up very quickly in terms of like people's comfort level. And so we really work on exercises to put down all the crap we've been carrying, because women carry a lot. And so some of the exercises we do goes through looking at like, what are you carrying that you're not actually responsible for, but you're doing it anyway and exhausting yourself? And can we leave some of that in the retreat space when you go home? So you have tools when you leave there to really recognize when you're over responsible, when you're doing things that you don't want to be doing. Saying no is always part of everything I do. So figuring that out. And I have women that come every year. So I don't run the same retreat every year. It might be called the same thing, but it's always tailored. It's always a little different. And they get something out of it every year. So you can expect to go home feeling lighter, having tools to navigate through whatever's going on. And the result of going to a retreat like this is oftentimes when women are overwhelmed, that leaves them feeling resentful, and they don't really know why, but they might then be short-tempered. Maybe it's not like huge outbursts of anger, but maybe they're snapping at their kids and they're short with their people and they're not as patient with their team at work. If you come on a weekend like this, you're going to see that, and you're going to have tools to move through it. So you go home a lot calmer, a lot more intentional, connected. It improves relationships, romantic, friends, kids, work, otherwise. I don't want to oversell, life is not going to be perfect when you go back home, but you're going to have tools that will make it so much better. So it's one weekend away, but it's one weekend that affects so many others.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I really love that.
Thank you.
All right. If anyone had anything to add, if you're watching this now or you're watching this on the replay, please feel free to comment and share this video. You can, if you're watching this on Facebook, you can reach me at Galit Speaks on Facebook, on Instagram Galit Speaks, on YouTube Galit Speaks, all of the social media Galit Speaks. I'd love to hear how you felt about this topic. I'd love for you to reach out to Jennifer and take advantage of her coaching and her retreat. It's definitely something I'm going to be looking into because it actually is pretty close to me. So coming on, and I feel like a women's retreat is very much needed.
I think it's always needed.
Yeah. And let me ask you another question about that retreat, because that's something that I'm like gravitating towards. In your retreat, what's the women that come? Is it usually mothers? Is it a specific age group, or does it really like vary?
It's everything you can think of. So I probably have women in their late 30s all the way up to their 70s, moms, women who've never had kids, married, divorced, single, you name it. My women run the gamut. So there's no particular, some people are very specific in when they talk about their clientele. And I'm very lucky that I tend to attract people-pleasing perfectionist women, but that's kind of the thing that is the commonality. But other than that, no, it's all over the place.
That's amazing. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Jennifer. I really, really, really appreciate you coming on. And I'm so thankful that you were here.
It was so my pleasure. Obviously, this is something I love talking about and I'm passionate about it. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right. Everyone, I will see you next week and we will have another guest. So until then, have a great day. Bye-bye.